Guys, in front of us today, we have a Dev Insight Season 22 Weapons Preview article. Let's dive right on in. Happy Wednesday, Guardians. We've got a new Dev Insight article dropping in hot today, this time diving deeper into what the world of weapons will look like with Season 22. From the highly coveted Monte Carlo catalyst, to overall balancing philosophy, here's a breakdown of what players can look forward to when the next season drops. First up, let's look at balancing. Weapon balancing. Hello everyone, Weapons team here with your look forward at Season 22's Weapon Balance Pass. But first, something different. A look back at the mid-season Balance Pass. This is something we haven't done before, but in the future, we hope we can do it more often. We'd like to take a quick glance back at how the Sandbox looked in the couple of weeks leading up to the mid-season Balance Pass, and then compare that to how it changed in the weeks following it. Hopefully this gives you a clear picture of how things have shaken out and what we may be looking at tuning in the future. Below we have a few different charts representing high skill PvP from the 2 weeks before the patch release, showing usage on the x-axis and kills over expected, a measure of effectiveness we use that shows whether a weapon is over or underperforming giving its usage on the y-axis. On the top, we have the all-up combined numbers for the primary weapon types. You can see that hand cannons are slightly edged down in usage by pulse rivals, but are the most effective weapon type holistically, excluding Vex Mythic class up in the top left corner. Underneath that, we have the top 50 weapons broken out individually. Dude, it's interesting that Vex Mythic class is creating that outlier, right? Now this breakdown shows that Immortal made up a high percentage of not only all primary weapon kills, but also some machine gun kills specifically, and the effectiveness was still elevated higher than we would want a weapon that far up on the scale to be. You can also see the Messenger Adept elevated to the right, No Time to Explain nearly dead on the line for kills over expected, and Graviton Lance sitting slightly negative. The news that we were going to nerf them preemptively began their moves downward compared to the chart we showed in the mid-season preview, as some players began to experiment with other options in preparations for the changes. Now let's take a look at the charts from the weeks following the patch, again from high skill PvP. You can see the difference a few weeks and the patch have made. Hand cannons have moved upwards, while pulse rifles and SMGs have both trended downwards overall. Most importantly, there haven't been any large shifts in effectiveness in either the positive or negative directions, which can potentially come from nerfing or buffing things too much and would indicate comparative imbalance between the main primary weapons. On the top 50 weapons chart, Immortal Adept still reigns supreme for the moment, but the usage has decreased without corresponding increases in effectiveness. This primes the weapon for our move into Season 22, where its effectiveness will be further impacted by the damage fall-off and zoom decoupling. Rose and Ace of Spades have surpassed No Time to Explain and the Messenger Adept, and while Graviton remains elevated in usage, the near-even effectiveness indicates that it is, at present, no longer a balanced concern. You can also continue to see why we've been keeping an eye on Vex Mythic class, which is wildly effective compared to other primary weapons. Again, I don't think anybody's jumping up saying Vex Mythic class is meta. Like, what's going on here? Outside of like a few random fire builds, I really don't use Vex Mythic class that often. And here, just for a comparison's sake, we have additional charts, this time from all skill PvP with all primary weapon types and the top 50 weapons. These charts show there is a solid balance among the mid-range weapons in terms of effectiveness heading into Season 22, with nothing notable out of band. Look at that, guys. Now you're probably wondering, why are they showing us this? Well, for comparison's sake, after the massive range changes next week, we're gonna see where everything sits on this chart. Now, a couple of interesting things to note. Hand cannons are comparatively much less effective when we add the lower skill levels back into our analysis. And if we remove high skill from the equation, their effectiveness is negative. And instead, the exotic auto rifles are the ones highest up on the chart. This is a good indication that we should keep a close eye on auto rifles, especially given most of them will be receiving a buff to range in Season 22. That said, we saw in the high skill charts that they tend to drop dramatically in effectiveness as you get into higher skill brackets, where peak shooting and player cover is ubiquitous. As always, we'll be keeping an eye on the numbers and our ears peeled for feedback from the community on how things feel, and we'll be out there playing alongside you. Now let's get into what you can expect from weapons in Season 22. I think the main takeaway about this, guys, is that usage isn't everything, okay? By all accounts, Centrifuge should have been nerfed this past season, right? Just purely based on usage. But when you actually break it down in the skill brackets, it makes a lot more sense. And yes, the higher you go up on the skill curve, people start to play a lot more peak-oriented than in the lower skill brackets. I really like that they gave us this chart, though. This gives you an idea of where things sit, depending on the skill brackets. And of course, this is going to prove to be a comparison for us when they give us the data after the range changes. Again, that's going to take time and feedback. Probably the next time we're going to get something like this is going to be in the mid-season update next season. Now, Season 22 weapon balance changes. Changes, Global. A while back, we made the swap to infinite primary ammo. Now, it unintentionally generated a bug that caused running double special weapons to drop heavy ammo at an increased rate. While we find some applications of double special to be interesting, particularly builds utilizing special weapons with custom ammo economies like trace rifles and Forerunner, providing a flat-out benefit to ammo was negating the trade-off of running double specials. PvE kills with 2 special weapons equipped will now generate heavy ammo at the same rate as 2 primaries or 1 primary and 1 special. So essentially, guys, double special is nerfed. Reticles. We are continuing our mission to improve communication behind our hipfire reticles with a few quality of life changes. We replaced the perk active hipfire reticle element. The new one should work better at different field of view settings. Also, added a perk active indicator to symmetry. Move Grand Overture's charge meter further down the screen to reduce instances of overlapping other reticle elements. Alright, so again, continuing to update UI stuff here. I still maintain, Bungie, full custom reticles is the way to go. Now, zoom and damage fall off tuning. This is the big one. In case you missed it in the mid-season patch, we are making some major changes to the way zoom and damage fall off interacts with 3 main goals. Number 1, decrease the variance between the optimal engagement ranges of our mid-range weapons, that being auto rifles, pulse rifles, and hand cannons, to reduce the instances of one weapon or another being the clearly advantaged choice based on the minor differences in engagement distance. Number 2, slightly reduce the average engagement range in Crucible by pulling in the maximum damage fall-off distances of many weapons. And number 3, prevent individual weapons from overstepping their intended engagement ranges because of the multiplicative scaling that zoom provided to damage fall-off. This in turn allows us to buff the weapon archetypes themselves, since we no longer must be concerned about the top-end outliers. And again, guys, this makes a lot more sense. You add outliers, especially things like pulse rifles that can reach up to like that 50-meter territory, and Bungie would go in there and want to buff the entire archetype, but this would result in that one outlier being way out of band. Again, I'm going to circle back to what Bungie originally said about these range changes. This is a range compression. The floor is being picked up in a lot of cases, but the ceiling, though, is being reduced, in some cases just slightly. Now, to do this, we're going to be enforcing something called range compression. Wow, they literally said it. Where the highest achievable damage fall-off range on almost all weapons has been reduced to some extent, certain weapons have been reduced more than others. This, in many cases, the lower edges of their damage fall-off ranges have been brought upwards. Now, before we jump into that, let's take a moment to explain what zoom does, and then how it interacts with damage fall-off. Up until Season 22, the zoom stat has always provided 4 positive benefits when aiming down sights. Number 1, it scales damage fall-off distance. Number 2, it scales aim assist fall-off distance. Number 3, it increases accuracy. And number 4, it reduces recoil. Hot damn, that's a lot of benefits. Now, as of Season 22, we have removed the first benefit from that list. So the zoom stat will no longer scale damage fall-off distance. It will still continue to provide the other benefits. In its place, we have a new stat called the aim down sights damage fall-off scaler, which we have applied to all weapons that can experience damage fall-off. Note, the following goes into deeper detail than some may desire digging into. If you want to go ahead and skip to all the numbers and mumbo jumbo, feel free to jump down to the weapon archetype section. We're going to get to that in just a second, guys. I like the information. But again, timestamp above if you want to just skip. Now, prior to and in Season 21, the ADS damage fall-off distance was formulated when you aim down sights by multiplying the base damage fall-off distance, the distance at which your weapon experienced damage fall-off when hip firing, by the zoom of the weapon. Ah, yes, that's right. So like 1.1, 1.2, etc. Now, from Season 22 and on, the ADS damage fall-off distance will be formulated by multiplying the base damage fall-off distance by the ADS damage fall-off scalar stat value. Below, you will find a handful of tables that will explain the changes and their effects on the various weapon archetypes. The first table shows the current zoom values for the weapon at their base and with rangefinder in comparison to the new ADS damage fall-off scalar value. Below that, we have a comparison with the Season 21 damage fall-off start distances with and without rangefinder for all primary weapons, and then their values in Season 22 with the new changes. Then we also have the comparison data for special weapons, which have all been tuned to keep them mostly in line with where they are currently, except where it is noted. Now, we do not expect these values to be final, but we wanted to start the mid-range weapons on a more even footing than they have been in the past. Keep in mind, even with their damage fall-off start values being similar, weapons will perform differently once their damage fall-off begins, as they currently do in the live game. Rifle-style weapons will experience fall-off more gradually, while handheld ones will experience it more quickly, but the differences should be much less extreme. In addition, we have also hand-tuned a small list of exotics and all special weapons with the intention of keeping them near where they are in the live game, as opposed to allowing them to receive substantial buffs or nerfs with these overarching changes, and we'll share those details below. Now, starting with the decoupled damage fall off from zoom. We added a fixed ADS damage fall off scaler to all guns with damage fall off. In general, this matches the standard zoom value for the weapon type, with some exceptions as seen below bolded. All right, so this is actually broken down by weapon type. Sidearms, you've got base zoom of 1.2. Base zoom plus rangefinder is 1.32, with the new ADS damage fall off scaler being 1.2. All right, the main thing is, guys, we want to go through this list and see what has changed from base to the new ADS damage fall off scaler. Pretty much ignore rangefinder as that's getting nerfed. By the way, it may only be a 0.1 difference here in some cases, like hand cannons 1.4 to 1.5, but these make a big difference. Auto rifles 1.6 to 1.7. Pulse rifles are still going to be at 1.7, but keep in mind that's for lightweights, rapid fires, and adaptives. High impacts and aggressive pulse rifles though are getting a range nerf. Look at that, 1.8 to 1.7. with both bows and scout rifles being the same. Now, Bungie continues, once we chose the new values for the ADS damage fall off stat for each weapon, we went through and updated the base damage fall off values to fit into the new scheme, thus allowing players to invest into the range stat to offset some of the reduction caused by the loss of higher than average zoom. Range as a stat is much more easily acquired on most weapons than zoom is, so this allows more weapons to get closer to the maximum values that were previously only achievable with high base zoom or rangefinder, without allowing any of them to reach or exceed what the previous maximums were. In the case of aggressive hand cannons, with the base ADS damage fall off scaler moving up to 1.5, they were far too rangy, so we have decreased their top end damage fall off a small amount. They still come out positive on the exchange compared to the base behavior from before. Now, we rebalanced the base damage fall off start on several weapon archetypes to account for the new ADS damage fall off scaler values. Sidearms increased at 100 range by 1.2. SMGs increased at 0 range by 1.3 and increased at 100 range by 0.8. Okay. You see that, guys? What this means, like, for instance, in that case, SMGs, you're still gonna get benefits, but it tapers off, right? It has diminishing returns. This is, again, range compression. Auto rifles increased at 100 range by 2.5. Oh, wow. Auto rifles, man. Break out that age-old bond. Aggressive hand cannons decrease at 100 range by 1.0. Pulse rifles increase at 100 range by 0.5. Now, ADS damage fall-off start distances in meters. 0 to 100 range stat. Wow, Bungie just gave it to us without us even testing. Now, keep in mind, this is going to change greatly depending on the weapon you're using, but these are the parameters. So if take, for instance, sidearms, 13.2 to 16.8 is the base. It's still going to be 13.2 next season, but it's going to go up to 18.0 without the need for rangefinder. SMGs, 12.6 to 22.4. The floor is actually going to go up to 14.42, with the ceiling also going up to 23.52. Again, still less than that of rangefinder, but that's the point here, right? Bungie's trying to make sure rangefinder isn't the go-to stat anymore. They want the weapons to stay within their intended ranges. Auto rifles, 17.2 to 33.20. I know that's a very large margin, but keep in mind we do have rapid fire autos. And then 18.28 to 39.53. That is a big jump, a massive jump on the ceiling there, even surpassing that of rangefinder auto rifles. Hand cannons, 22.40 to 35 meters. Post range changes, 24 meters to 37.5 meters. Again, less than that of rangefinder, but overall, this is a net benefit. And keep in mind, all of your exotic hand cannons are going to be feeling much better next week. Pulse rifles, 25.5 meters to 39 meters. And this is essentially going to be the same at 25.5 meters to 39.95 meters. So a small bump there in the ceiling. Aggressive hand cannons, 25.2 meters to 39.2 meters. This is going up both on the floor and the ceiling, although not as much as they originally pitched to us. It's still going to be 27 meters on the floor, but 40.5 meters on the ceiling. We were definitely speculating another 120 round per minute meta. This may actually keep it from breaking out too far. And then we have bows and scout rifles, which are still pretty much the same. Now, examples of how this works. An adaptive hand cannon with a range stat of 70 would have previously had its damage fall off start at 31.2 meters when aiming down sights, or 34.3 meters if it has rangefinder. Now though, regardless of whether it has rangefinder or not, the damage fall off starts at 33.5 meters when aiming down sights. Now, if you've got a rangefinder hand cannon like a God Roll Palindrome or something like that, and you're like, oh my god, this just killed my roll, keep in mind, you still have the other 3 benefits out of the 4 that Bungie originally posted above. So you're still gonna have a good weapon. It just won't be the say-all, end-all. And personally, I like it when we have a very diverse exotic meta. Not that I don't mind using legendaries, but we did have a scenario here recently where legendaries have really creeped up past mini exotics, largely due to to range and largely due to rangefinder rolling on those legendaries. Now moving on to special weapons. And guys, before we push any further, and I don't know if Bungie's gonna clarify it at all in this article, but how is this gonna affect last work? You know what I mean? Like, we don't even aim down sights, right? Now moving into special weapons. Pellet shotguns, 1.2. The new ADS damage falloff scaler, 1.0. Now the notes here, pellet shotguns had custom work to prevent their damage falloff from scaling when aiming down sights. This has been removed. Interesting. Okay, so it should be the same. Slug shotguns, 1.2 and 1.2. Fusion rifles, 1.5 to 1.3. Fusion rifles had custom work to reduce all the effects of zoom. This has been removed. This is effectively a small damage fall off range nerf. Interesting. Okay, we're gonna actually be doing some pre and post testing. I'm glad Bungie's including these notes. Trace rifles, 1.6 to 1.6. Linear fusion rifles, 2.5 to 2.5. Sniper rifles, 4.5, 4.5. Now, they did mention here, zoom values on sniper rifles were mostly irrelevant to damage fall off, except very low values on large maps. Yeah, I would say rapid fire sniper rifles, that's the biggest annoyance with them, is that they would just lose bullet magnetism, right? Now, custom tuned exotic ranges. Like the special weapons above, these have been set to keep the weapons near where they are currently, as opposed to massively buffing or nerfing them with the overarching range tuning. So starting with Ace of Spades, when Memento Mori is active, previously had a 10% damage fall off range penalty. This penalty has been increased to 15%, a slight nerf to offset the buff it got in the neutral state. All right, that sucks, but I guess in the grand scheme of things, I would rather that than, of course, losing Memento Mori. Now, Devil's Ruin, when firing the laser beam, previously had a 20% damage fall off range bonus. This bonus has been reduced to 10%, a slight nerf to offset the buff it got in the neutral state. Gotcha. Okay, so it pretty much evens out, or what they're saying here is that it will even out. Let me just say this, guys. We are going to be doing pre and post testing on all of this. Now, Revision 0, when Hunter's Trace is active, now has a 4.5 times ADS damage fall off scaler. Oh, I'm still not going to use it in PvP. I'm just saying, guys. I'm just being real with you. Last Word now has a 1.1 times ADS damage fall off scaler. What does that mean? I thought it already has a 1.1 times scaler. Also, who is aiming down sights with Last Word? Stop. Crimson now has a 1.3 times ADS damage fall off scaler. It previously had an intrinsic 5% damage fall off range penalty. This has been removed. Let me just say this, guys, with all this stuff, like, we're just gonna have to do pre and post testing. We like to double check just to make sure, right? Currently, right now, Crimson sits at a 1.4 times scaler. They're saying it's gonna be a 1.3, so effectively that is a nerf, but granted, the floor is being picked up. So we're just gonna have to see where it shakes out range-wise post updates. Vex Mythic class now has a 1.5 times ADS damage fall off scaler. Again, Bungie was talking about earlier how Vex Mythic class is an outlier. It currently has a 1.5 times damage fall off scaler in the game, but thank you for the clarity there. Forerunner has a 2 times ADS damage fall off scaler, pretty much matching where it is now. Ariana's Vow at 2.4. Now that was a lot of info. If you're still with us, or you just skipped it all, let's get into the more standard fare for a weapons balance updates. Weapon archetypes, hand cannons. We have heard the complaint that hand cannons feel underpowered in PvE, and we wanted to address that while also giving them a better case to fit their hard-hitting fantasy. We decided that it made sense for them to be the big game hunters for primary weapons, so we have massively increased the damage they deal to major combatants. Additionally, without investing in reload speed or perks that auto-reload, hand cannons have often felt too punishing for missed shots or running out of ammo at critical moments. We buffed their baseline reload speed in a way that filters upward to be a buff for all hand cannons, although it's a smaller buff as you get to higher levels of the stat. We also built a new hand cannon subfamily for the first time in a while, adding heavy bursts to the list of intrinsic traits. Warden's Law will deal increased precision damage, but it comes with the challenge of needing to land 2 bullets on a target instead of just 1, providing an extra reward for players who have great aim. Well, if it's as bad as it is currently, it's not gonna matter, but it's not supposed to, because it's supposed to be actually a burst fire, or like a 2-round burst hand cannon. So instead of like a 3-round burst from Crimson, it shoots 2 rounds. And with it being consecutive, one after the other, I think it should be easier to land. Now, general, increased reload speed at 0 stat by 15%. Oh, all right. PvE damage, increased damage against minor combatants, red bars, by 20%. Increased damage against major combatants, orange bars, by 75%. And heavy bursts. Change Warden's Law to be the first member of his new subfamily, Heavy Bursts, which fires a 2-round burst. Now bows. As we mentioned previously, bows have had an issue with hit registration at longer ranges due to the velocity of the projectile sometimes preventing them from registering as hit scan. We've increased the base velocity of precision bows and brought lightweights up to match, which has done wonders for how they feel at a distance. We've also increased the maximum speed that the reload animation can play out, so that reload perks and scalers will continue to have an effect even at higher stat levels. Now general, reduce the minimum reload animation duration from 0.5 seconds to 0.3 seconds. This means that applying reload speed scalers on top of a high reload stat will still have an effect, and increase the projectile velocity at full draw so that the projectiles will continue to perform as if they were hit scan at longer distances at higher frame rates. Now lightweight bows, equalize the full draw projectile velocity with precision bows. Alright, now SMGs, corrected a long-standing visual bug that prevented the RPM stat from displaying correctly. This does not change the actual RPM of the weapons. They've always fired at 720. Wow! Aggressives, fix the RPM stat display to correctly show 720 rounds per minute. So again guys, things like Immortal, Terrible, all that stuff. If you saw Mercules' chart from way back when, he actually had it clocked at 720. And that's actually the speed, the rounds per minute for those weapons, not 750 the game showed for years and years. And I don't know why that even became a visual bug. Like, couldn't they just change that stats or whatever? Now sidearms. When we changed the range values for sidearms, it became apparent very quickly that aggressives with their current extremely forgiving body shot time to kill were far out of band. We have reduced their base damage so that they can no longer kill in 3 bursts of only body shots, making them less forgiving in exchange for the increased damage fall off distance that they received. So aggressives, reduce base damage from 32 to 30. Okay, so things like forgiveness, guys, which is a pretty good sidearm. There's so many sidearms these days though. I don't think I use aggressives nearly as much as like when Breach Light was really popping off, right? But base damage is being reduced here. Now pulse rifles. The BXR Battler never felt right with the zoom not at 20, but boy did it feel nice to hit up to 45 meters, right? Now that it will no longer be a balance concern in terms of engagement ranges, the time has come to put it back to where it belongs. BXR Battler, increase zoom back to 20. So again guys, what you need to take from this is that the benefits, those other 3 benefits, will still take effect on BXR, just not the range. All right. Granted, it's getting a huge range nerf. Let's just be real, like massive. Now shotguns, fixed a visual bug that was causing the impact stat to display incorrectly. This is cosmetic only. Damage per pellet is unchanged. So general, fix the impact stat on the Comedian. Fusion rifles. Players have noted that the enhanced intrinsic perks and adept masterworks felt like they were making their fusions worse by reducing the damage per bolt. We made a change to prevent that from happening and allowed those alterations to strictly improve the weapons as intended. So general, fix an issue where adept masterworks and enhanced intrinsic perks were decreasing the damage dealt by fusions when they changed the charge time stat. Again, this is supposed to just be a net positive. Now, I do highly suggest on things like high impact fusions, for instance, like a loaded question, use that adept charge time mod. Now, wave frame heavy grenade launchers. It always feels bad to kill yourself with a slightly misplaced heavy shot. So we've reduced the lethality of these weapons to the user so that you can be a little bit less careful when using them. So general, the size and damage of the self-damage AoE is now reduced. This should make it much safer to fire the projectile closer to your feet. Yeah, it should be substantially less damage, considering like that's the whole point of a wave frame, right? Now swords. At present, swords don't hold much value to players because, although they excel in ease of use and are ammo rich, they require users to put themselves directly in harm's way. Sword Guard could mitigate this, but the guard's duration is difficult to predict with incoming fire and disables the sword's primary means of defense, that being the full charge heavy attack. The guard also mitigates a very small amount of damage when compared with our other existing defensive options, the glaive. Further, while numerous sword guard related perks are already in place within the game, they don't see much play. So we decided to undertake a rework with the aim to increase the viability of blocking to advance on enemies, increase the value of sword guard related perks, as well as allow guardians to use their full charge heavy attacks more often. Our intent is that swords now occupy a niche where they provided both better staying power and survival. So sword guard energy now recharges after a short delay when used, but recharges much faster. The delay before recharge and the recharge rate are both governed by the guard guard charge rate stats. Now, this delay ranges between 2.7 seconds and 1.05 seconds, decreasing with the charge rate stat. Now, we've massively increased the rate energy return after the delay to compensate, and they increase even more at higher charge rate stats. Even after the delay, swords now return to full energy from empty faster than before this rework. Now, full power heavy attacks can now be used with any non-zero amount of sword energy, rather than requiring full sword energy. We massively increased sword guard damage resistance, giving it between 82.5 and 95% damage reduction, depending on guard resistance stat. Now, this damage resistance value is sharply reduced against other players like Glaives. Then it provides between 52.5 and 65% damage reduction, depending on guard resistance stat. Now, sword guard no longer loses energy when taking damage. As a result of the above, guard efficiency has been removed as a stat. Sword guard duration is now increased across every guard type, with those with the shortest durations benefiting most. Now, sword guard talent notes have had their stats squished down. Combined with the above, even though their stats have been reduced, their damage reduction, charge rates, and guard durations are now increased across the board. This allows origin traits and other sword perks more room to increase these stats and allow performance beyond their previous maximum. Sword guard talent nodes now visually affect the charge rate bar on the inspection screen when you hover over or select them, similar to other stat affecting nodes. Sword movement speed while blocking has increased from a 0.75 multiplier to 0.85 multiplier. And the Lament exotic sword has been special case, so its charge rates and delay are unaffected, but it still benefits from the increased guard damage reduction and duration. All right, so it seems like a lot of the changes here are more utility related. I'm curious to see like how many sequences of heavy attacks we can get out, what the DPS output will be. This is going to require definitely some pre and post testing. I do still believe that swords overall just need a damage buff, like essentially double. And I know some of you are going to say, Cross, that's excessive, but dude, come on, it's a sword. Now, exotic weapons, Monte Carlo. We finally did it. It was mechanically the most complex catalyst we have ever done, requiring a host of custom animation work and a lot of things we have never done on a weapon before, but we hope you enjoy it. Dude, guys, Bungie actually dropped some gameplay here. Look at this. So we got Monte Carlo in action in the duality dungeon. He's firing and still proccing. He goes for the knife kill. This gives him Markov chain times 5. And then he does the animation, which states bayonet locked, which does a tremendous amount of damage. I don't know if you can see that or not, guys. That's 116,000 damage. 116,000! Now, Quicksilver Storm. Players have been reporting that it felt like the ammo was not being loaded into Quicksilver Storm at the correct time. We investigated and discovered a misalignment with the animation and the ammo loading that has been corrected. So, fix an issue where ammo was loaded into Quicksilver Storm slightly too late in the reload animation. So, a visual bug. Dead Man's Tell. Fix the displayed impact stat. This is cosmetic only. Damage per bullet is unchanged. Two-Tail Fox reworked the Catalyst perk, Third Tail. The performance of this weapon was just a little bit off, so we have changed it to fire the third rocket following the second rocket instead of at the same time, which helps it lean harder into the Three Tails fantasy. So Two-Tail Fox now fires a 3-shot burst with the Catalyst instead of firing 3 rockets in a 2-shot burst. Now, Verglass Curve. We have fixed an issue where if Whisper of Fissures gets the kill, it does not count for the Hell Barrage stacks. We've also buffed the weapon's performance in PvP when using Hell Barrage. Whisper of Fissures detonations now generate Hell Barrage stacks if the stasis crystals was created by this weapon. Now, Shiver Quiver now activates when slowing enemies. We also increased the slow stacks from 40 to 60 when hitting players directly with the Hell Barrage arrows. This allows for a freeze if 2 Hell Barrage arrows hit the same player. Now, La Monarque. Oh boy. Lemon has long been a thorn in the side of many high-end PvP players, with the massive chunk damage hitting hard and the long damage over time duration that kept you out of the fight for what felt like an eternity. We have decided to address both facets of this problem at the same time by shifting Lemon to use the same damage profile as a lightweight bow. It now deals 85 damage on impact to the body and 136 to the head against players. We've also reduced the damage over time duration from 3 seconds down to 1.75 seconds, which makes it feel significantly less painful to be hit by this weapon. The damage over time deals the same total damage as before against players, divided into 6 ticks instead of 8, but we've increased the damage over time damage in PvE by 50%. Wow. Now in PvE, this should result in a slight DPS increase, with reduced impact damage being offset by the faster draw time and the increased damage over time. So specifically here, guys, Bungie reduced draw time from 684 to 612. That's milliseconds. Reduced body shot damage damage from 100 to 85, and increased critical hit multiplier from 1.5 to 1.6, with our crit damage going from 150 to 136. They changed the poison damage over time effect, reducing poison damage over time duration from 3 seconds to now 1.75 seconds, and moved from 8 damage ticks to now 6. But the poison deals the same total damage to players. Now the poison damage increase in PvE by 50%. The takeaway for this, guys, is that if you get hit by a Monarque, you do not have to go wait in a corner for 20 minutes to get your health back. And with them lowering the damage, it's gonna really push people to go for crits. This is a good change, guys. Truly, truly. Now, Vex Mythoclass. Vex Mythoclass has been very, very strong in PvP for some time, having secretly benefited from a number of buffs to auto rifles that have increased its usability. Actually, it has. Yes, the high impact buff had an effect on Vex. Now, with auto rifles getting another bump to range in Season 22, we felt that Vex had been pushed up a notch too far in our playtests. We reduced the RPM from 390 to 360 to match other auto rifles in its subfamily. At the same time, we wanted to make sure this was not a DPS decrease in PvE, so we have increased its damage to compensate. RPM reduced from 390 to 360 to match other high-impact auto rifles, but increased damage against minor combatants and major combatants by 25%. Wow. Yes, this is a pretty substantial nerf, because this is kind of like one of those things that really made Vex Mythoclass stand out, it being a 390, but maintaining the damage of a 360. But no lie, since the beginning of this article, and I love everything I'm seeing here, but I feel like Vex Mythoclass is kind of being targeted. I'm just saying. Like, Bungie, it seems like you don't like Vex. Now, Tommy's matchbook. The previous setup wasn't working as expected, so the new behavior gives the same end results, but front loads more Scorch onto the base behavior, so updated the Scorch value. It was previously 14 plus 7 with Ember of Ashes fragment equips. Now, it will be 15 plus 5. Okay, so the base version of this without Ember of Ashes is what's getting a buff, but overall, it's getting a nerf. What? Now, Touch of Malice. Yes, I just got this past week. Touch of Malice is a strong weapon, but the usability of the gun was just too low in any content where it mattered. This was due in large part to how easy it was to unintentionally kill yourself. When we brought back Touch of Malice, we increased the amount of self-damage the final round dealt to the user, because there are far more ways to self-heal in Destiny 2 than there were when the gun originally made its appearance in Destiny 1. Well, we believe we may have gone too far. To make it up to you, the final round now deals 20% additional damage in PvE. Additionally, we have reduced the damage it deals to the user, and it can no longer kill the user. This isn't to say that you can't die when you're at low health, but the weapon itself will not be the thing that kills you. It will just hold you at 1 HP if you continue to fire it for too long. We also set up the Touch of Mercy perk to be a lot more useful and easier to activate, and we have fixed the Ball of Darkness to correctly deal arc damage, blinding PvE combatants. So again, increase final round damage in PvE by 20%, decrease the self damage from the final round from 10 to 7, and the final round damage can no longer kill the user. Increase the health awarded by the Touch of Mercy perk from 30 to 75, and set up the Touch of Mercy to work like unrelenting. Guardians and major combatants give more points toward activation, and we increase the time allowed between kills. Ball of Darkness now appropriately deals arc damage and will blind combatants and stun unstoppable champions. That is a huge buff all around the board for Touch of Malice. I'm so glad I just got it. And if you're wondering, Cross, how the hell did you not have this thing? Listen, RNG is a brutal thing, and for some reason, I have the worst RNG. Malfeasance. Malfeasance does a lot, and we wanted to make sure you knew when you were getting the effects of the catalyst. So we fixed an issue where the Vorpal weapon catalyst wasn't displaying the status buff text. Now, Cloud Strike. Cloud Strike has been a very strong weapon flying under the radar for quite some time. Recently, it has become more prevalent, but getting killed by the explosion because your semi-nearby teammate chose the wrong lane to peek feels bad. Why, yes, it does. We want to maintain the exotic fantasy of the weapon and the core strength, but we felt the actual lethal distance itself could come down a bit. Players within the radius will still take damage. So in the hands of a skilled player, the weapon will still be a highly effective tool, but now you'll be much less likely to die if you aren't within a much smaller radius of your teammates when they get killed. So we reduce the lethal kill distance of the lightning strikes against players. Now let me just say, it is one of the most amazing feelings when you wipe a squad with Cloud Strike. At the same time, it sucks when you're the reason why your team just got wiped because you decided to stare at a sniper. Now, wicked implements. We took a conservative approach with the scout rifle out of the gate. We wanted to avoid creating a lousy experience for those on the receiving end of a long-range primary weapon with the ability to slow targets in PvP. Now that it's spent some time in the live game, we can give its intrinsic perk more uptime by making it easier to keep active. We also improved its utility by providing more opportunities to generate stasis shards, with Headstone added to the catalyst and the ability to create tracking shards from destroying stasis crystals. You can keep your mag full and your power and melee up more easily. Shard generation will continue to have a brief cooldown as with all other shard sources. So the timing window for creeping attrition has been increased from 3.5 seconds to 4.5 seconds. You can now also activate Tithing Harvest by destroying stasis crystals. And the Wicked Implement Exotic Catalyst now also includes the Headstone perk. Guys, that is a massive change. We said it all along. We literally made 3 different reviews for Wicked Implement. We wanted it to be better. We even suggested Headstone. Bungie, thank you so much. This is exactly what this exotic needed. Now moving on to perks. Bipod. We were a little overcautious when we made this perk. We wanted to see how people were able to combine it with other perks and effects in the wild to improve their DPS. After reviewing, we believe we can safely reduce the damage penalty by a substantial amount. So we're reducing the damage penalty from 40% to now 25%. All right? What do y'all think, guys? Might be worth it now, right? Envious Assassin. This is already a strong perk, but the mental overhead of remembering to swap to your weapon before the invisible time limit expired, combined with it no longer working once your magazine was overflowed by any amount, made it slightly less fun to use than was originally intended. We made some changes that should retain all the strength of the perk while also making it less cumbersome to utilize in combat. There is no longer a time limit after kills within which you must activate the perk or get another kill. Very nice. The perk will now activate even if the magazine is overflowed. It will stop activating once you hit maximum mag size of 2.5 times or greater. An enhanced Envious Assassin now provides fractionally more ammo per kill instead of a longer window of time after a kill. By the way, guys, forgive me, my dogs are barking. Now, Under Over was a little too niche for its own good. It was strong, but opportunities to utilize the perk were too few and far between. To address this, we've increased the already existing damage bonus and added 2 more. We hope that the perk can find more of a place in in-game PvE builds, particularly for activities which feature Dark Cabal and Lucent Moths. It will now provide bonus shot damage against players with Woven Mail. Interesting, okay? And increases the bonus damage against combat shields. They'll significantly increase damage to enemies who are enhanced by Dark Cabal overshields in addition to enemies shielded by Lucent Moths. All right, we're gonna have to see what that benefit is, like what's the percentage buff, but I'm interested. Now, Under Pressure. Under Pressure has long been a perk that offers a lot of upside reward for comparatively little risk in PvP, as it often triggers neutrally during combat and sees nearly 100% uptime on special ammo weapons. It is especially potent on fusion rivals. As such, we've reduced the maximum accuracy bonus that can be granted by Under Pressure, while allowing it to retain the full strength of the stability bonus. So, reduce the maximum accuracy cone scaler from 0.5 to 0.75. But again, guys, it's still gonna have the stability buffs. Now, Shoot to Loot. It seemed a shame that pairing Shoot to Loot with perks like Explosive Payload and Kinetic Tremors didn't allow the splash damage to interact with orb collecting. So we did some custom tuning behind the scenes to make it happen. Yes! We also removed an unintended interaction that allows Shoot to Loot to continuously grant ammo to overflow max without actually consuming the ammo brick on the ground. No longer triggers the reload when shooting a special brick that cannot be picked up while also having an overflowed weapon equipped. Explosive damage now interacts with Orbs of Power. Now, Valiant Charge. The perk now deactivates as intended after a single swing. Ambush. There were certain unintended damage impulses that were causing the Ambush origin trait to deactivate, so we excluded those from the list of potential triggers. It no longer deactivates from healing, fall damage, or being shot by allies. They would actually do funky things like activate or persist longer than it should, but we're not going to talk about that. Now, Explosive Light. There's no more free explosive damage, but don't worry, there are more than enough Orbs of Power to go around. So we fixed a bug where enhanced version of the perk was granting 2 stacks on the initial orb pickup. Chill Clip. Chill Clip has been something of a must-have multi-tool. That's right, Bungie, we love it. And it was a little too easy to deal with all 3 types of champions at once. We've made it slightly more difficult to get the full freeze effect, which should move it back to being closer in line with other options. So we reduced the slow stacks from 60 to 40. Wolfpack rounds no longer trigger this perk. Wow, I didn't even know that. Okay, 60 to 40. You're gonna need to actually get 3 shots off, guys, to get that freeze. No lie, I was expecting worse. I can live with this. Now, to craft or not to craft. Here's what's changing. Weapon crafting is a large part of Destiny 2, and with a new season on the horizon, we've got a few things to look forward to. From changes to how weapon progression works to overall crafting economic changes, here's a brief overview of what types of changes are coming down the pipeline for Season 22. So, weapon progression earning. What's changing? While short cheese style weapon level farming is not ideal, instead of nerfing that type of behavior behavior and taking the option away from players. We've decided to buff the weapon level progression obtained through more meaningful methods, like activity completions and PvP kills. We're also adding a currency-driven method of directly advancing a weapon's level. That is much better. Now, since the opportunities to get kills in PvP is far lower than what is possible in PvE, we will be increasing the amount of progression earned by defeating guardians in PvP activities, beginning with Season 22. We're boosting the activity completion progression across several activity types. This includes Crucible, Trials of Osiris, Dares of Eternity, Wellspring, Gambit, Platinum score completions of Legend and Master Solo Lost Sectors. We're also adding the capability for progress that exceeds the current level to roll over to the next level. This issue has been a prominent talking point when looking at crafting for a while because of the way weapon level progression functions. Due to the necessity to store weapon level and progress on each individual weapon, the weapon leveling system could not be set up in a similar fashion to how the Season Pass level works or how character level worked in the past. The system we're currently using can be a bit fragile. It was a key part in the Revision 0 API mishaps that occurred in the Season of the Seraph. Due to the risk and some technical gremlins, we deprioritized this work in favor of the deep side changes we made in Season 20 and 21. However, you'll finally be getting this rollover behavior in Season 22. As a result of this rollover change, weapon leveling through completing activities should see a large overall increase in efficacy, not just limited to the specific activity types we're explicitly modifying for Season 22. That is fantastic, guys. Again, you would hit that rollover point and then nothing else would progress afterwards because it hit that wall, right? Now it's gonna roll over and you're gonna get full completion percentage. Now, to round out the weapon progression changes, we're also adding the capability to directly increase a weapon's level through currency expenditure. Crafted and enhanced weapons will both receive a new mod slot in their weapon details, where you can spend glimmer and enhancement cores to boost the level of the weapon. This mod will increase the weapon's levels directly, leveling your existing progress towards the next level in touch. Now, while there's no cap to how far you can boost the weapon's level to, the cost of this boosting will increase relative to the level of the weapon. Oh, so it's actually going to go up. Weapon usage is meant to be the main path for increasing a weapon's level. However, with the restrictions of how many weapons you can level at a time and the always increasing expansion to the amount of weapons that have a level, we wanted to provide an alternative method of leveling that allows for both the jump starting of a crafted weapon and also the ability to level a large amount of weapons stockpiled in your inventory. We do not want the level boosting cost to feel prohibitive. However, we do want players to have to make choices over which weapons they want to boost. All right, all around a win there for weapon crafting. Now, crafting economy changes. Another change we are making is that resonant and harmonic alloys will be deprecated as a required material and will no longer be obtained during a dismantle starting in Season 22. We are planning on removing these materials entirely from the game at some point in the future. But until then, your remaining materials will be available to be exchanged for glimmer at Raoul in the tower. Tell him hi for us. Again, guys, this has been Bungie's goal now for like the past, I don't know, what, year and a half. They've been slowly consolidating, simplifying pretty much all of our currencies because the original iteration of weapon crafting was so confusing. We had like 7 different currencies. Now, Neomuna weapon pattern acquisition. While there have been modifications to the reward behavior of these weapons, the changes haven't had the desired impact and the weapon pattern remains elusive, even for those that are highly engaged. In Season 22, we'll be making some additional changes to help tackle the scarcity problem. The Neomuna weekly Pinnacle Story Mission Score Challenge will provide a guaranteed Neomuna weapon pattern progress the first time it is completed each week. The Neomuna Vendor Ingram upgrade will also increase the drop chance of a deep side Neomuna weapon. This is retroactive if you have already claimed the vendor upgrade. The Throne World Vendor Ingram upgrade will also receive the same behavior for the Throne World deep side weapons. And again, this will be retroactive. Season 22 will also include a bug fix in the underlying deep side drop system that manifested from the major overhaul we did for Lightfall. This bug could decrease the deep side drop rate as you near the completion of a pattern set. Although this deep side bug on its own would normally have a low impact on deep side behavior, the problem was exacerbated when coupled with the lack of deterministic deep side sources for Neomuna weapons. All right, overall win there, guys, if you haven't wrapped up those weapon patterns. Now, while we believe crafting is more in line with our original vision since the launch of the Witch Queen, we're still making necessary changes to the system and are in the middle of developing a large crafting related feature targeted targeted for the final shape year. We'll provide more details about these upcoming changes after they spend a bit more time in the oven. We're excited to share more. And that's a wrap on our latest developer insight entry. We hope you enjoyed the information shared, and we can't wait to share even more of what's on the horizon with our showcase on August the 22nd. And please, for the love of the traveler, please send us those epic clips of Monte Carlo in action. We're excited to see what sort of chaos ensues. Dude, I can't wait, guys. Fellas, this has been a very, very long article, but it has been packed with all kinds of great information. I've been saying for a while now that Sandbox at Bungie has been popping off, and here they are again. I love it that when they nerf something, they still buff it in other areas. Where back in the day, they used to just nerf it, and it would just nerf it in PvE and inside of PvP. All of these, for the most part, are very solid changes, and the first thing we're gonna do next season is use Monte Carlo with the catalyst. Guys, if you're interested in watching the reveal live next Tuesday, we will be live over on our Twitch. We'll be watching some lore stuff leading up to it. We're also gonna be doing some pre and post testing of everything Sandbox related once we get through the new content. So feel free to come by, guys. It should be a good time. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.